Hello my dear friends, and welcome back to a jam-packed Star Wars video. We've just had some major updates overnight, and I'm here to break them all down. The main topic of the day, as you probably worked out, is Ahsoka Season 2, but we also have some news from the maker himself, George Lucas, the 2D Clone Wars series creator, Genndy Tartakovsky, and the final budget for The Rise of Skywalker has finally been released. So this is going to be a lot of fun, and make sure you stay tuned to the end so you don't miss a single update. And one final thing before we dive into the juicy stuff, make sure to subscribe if you haven't done so. But no more jibber jabber my friends, shall we get into it? Let's start with Ahsoka Season 2. I've been talking about this show probably more than anyone on the internet. I am so freaking pumped. I know faith in Dave Filoni has definitely diminished across the board, but this series with on-location filming, with more Hayden Christensen, sounds like it's going to be insane. The leaks have been incredible, and the series is now going into post. But over this past weekend, we got some more information from Bryce Dallas Howard and Rosario Dawson, one at New York Comic Con and the other at Comic Con Scotland. Let's begin with Bryce, who spilled the most beans to a very curious Star Wars fan who asked her lots of questions. The first thing she notes is that she doesn't know if Season 2 is going to be the end. She doesn't know if it's going to be the final installment of Dave Filoni's story. I think it all depends on the performance of the second season. But also keep in mind, my friends, with Lucasfilm moving away from Disney Plus to focus on the big screen, if Ahsoka does have a follow-up, it's going to be in movie form. We already know that Dave Filoni has his own movie coming up at some point, so to be honest with you, I imagine any kind of continuation is going to be absorbed into that. But at this point, none of the directors know. Disney and Lucasfilm have not clarified if the show's being renewed again. That being said, Bryce's wording almost suggests that Dave treated Season 2 like it is going to be the last, and she promises runtimes of 45 to 60 minutes in length. That's already pretty standard, and I think they should be longer. If there is one complaint across all of the shows, setting aside subjective opinions on Acolyte, Book of Boba Fett, Kenobi, Mando, it seems like the general consensus among fans is that episodes of Star Wars television are way too short. They should be a good 20 or 30 minutes longer. Or just like Andor, make 12-episode seasons the norm. Instead of the Mandoverse standard, which has been just 8, 12 makes a lot more sense, especially when you're talking about Ahsoka Season 2. Forget the rumors, just based on the confirmed details from Star Wars Celebration, Season 2 sounds like it's trying to accomplish so much more than what 8 episodes can provide. I honestly think for the final season, or what is assumed to be the final season, they should have gone with 10 or 12. All of the creatives and actors keep talking about the wider scope of Season 2. Ivana Sakno mentioned greater character depth, but I think if they want to do that properly, they should change the structure and pacing of the season and really flesh it out. I guess the only issue is the budget, which they have been trying to reduce given the more recent Disney Plus mishaps. But we'll come on to the price in a moment, because Rosario Dawson has actually provided us an update. But returning to Bryce Dallas Howard, the next reveal is pretty darn impressive. For this season, Lucasfilm took on board the fan criticism about the way the show looked, the color grading, and cinematography. One way they're addressing it, of course, is filming on location instead of just relying on the volume stagecraft. But secondly, my friends, and this is huge, they hired a director of photography from Rogue One as one of the people that's going to help improve and strengthen Ahsoka's cinematography. This has exponentially increased my interest and excitement. Rogue One is one of the most beautiful Star Wars movies ever made. But now on to the release date. Bryce says they don't want to rush the visual effects, and post-production on Season 2 is going to last between 10 and 12 months. And this could mean the release date is sometime in the fall of 2026 at the earliest, or maybe it's going to follow a similar release date to the Book of Boba Fett, right at the end of December, going into 2027. People are saying it followed a very similar schedule to the first season, and that means at the earliest, August 2026. But if Bryce teases that they're taking more time with Season 2, then don't be surprised if it's winter of 2026. But this show is far too important to rush. But no matter what, Maul Shadow Lord and the Mandalorian and Grogu are going to come first. I stand by my previous prediction that Maul Shadow Lord is going to be May the 4th, just before the movie, and then, either in the fall or winter of next year, Ahsoka Season 2. So those are all of Bryce's comments. But now, on to Rosario Dawson, Ahsoka Tano herself. And speaking alongside Hayden Christensen, she confirmed plenty of scenes where Ahsoka is talking to Anakin's ghost, and both of them are involved in reshoots taking place in Scotland, so definitely more Anakin scenes. And Rosario says the budget on season 2 was lower than the first. But don't worry, I've already seen fans panic and say, that means season 2 is going to look worse, it's lower in quality. No, that's not the case. Part of it is due to filming in the UK. Then there is the fact there is less reliance on the volume, but generally speaking, despite the lower budget, this season ought to look better than the first. The filming locations are gorgeous, so I wouldn't be dismayed about these comments. But those, my friends, are the latest Ahsoka updates. So much juicy info. I love tidbits like this. They get us so hyped, and like I said, there's a lot of hate, a lot of concern, a lot of doubts about season 2. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it, if it ends up sucking or whatever, but I am super excited, and I genuinely think this could be one of the best Mando projects to date, because just based on what Bryce said, they're learning from their past mistakes, at least in terms of visuals. I don't know about Dave's writing, I still think he should have had a writing team, but he seems to know where he's going with this, and season 2 is going to be the start of his wider vision. Speaking to Vanity Fair, he says, quote, Ahsoka is just the start. It's a continuous story. It's driving towards a goal, as opposed to being little singular adventures. That's what I want the character to be doing. He goes on to say, I've only recently started to understand that all those kids that watch the Clone Wars are now adults. They're very excited about all the things they grew up with, as they should be. There is so much in this season for them. And so now, my dear friends, moving on to our next Star Wars update. The creator of the 2D Clone Wars show, Genndy Tartakovsky, recently opened up about Star Wars Visions, saying he loves the concept, but he wasn't invited to do a short. I sense a bit of saltiness when he says this. I think it would have been great to get him back, but the bigger story in this interview is that he says, to this day, George Lucas is still a huge fan of the micro-series they created back in 2003. He says, George looks back at it with fondness, and apparently he was recently interviewed for some kind of George Lucas book. I don't know if it's going to be a memoir, a history of Star Wars by the maker himself, or it's by someone else. Not sure what it's going to be, but to many fans, 2D Clone Wars remains the best version. Some prefer it to Dave Filoni's 3D series. And so finally, my friends, the final budget for The Rise of Skywalker is much higher than we thought. Movie budgets can take years to finalize. The original figure announced was somewhere around 412, but the final number is $593.7 million, making it the third most expensive movie in history. That is ridiculous. Well, like I say, in the spirit of learning lessons, that's why Disney and Lucasfilm have started to make cheaper movies. The Mandalorian and Grogu's budget is a fifth of this. But what do you guys think? Share your thoughts on all of today's news in the comments down below.